What did you make of Ronald Reagan, with whom
Well,
I
we
have
had
to
a good
assume you
time.
disagreed with him on almost every
We
issue?
had a good time. He and I had fascinating exchange about the Black Panther Party. I was telling him he didn't fully understand the role of breakfast programs and prison programs and helping the seniors in terms of
He
getting.
went into all this with you? You
Oh,
were,
yeah.
How old were you?
Dang, 1968, I was 16 years old.
So you're able to put up with Robbie George because you practiced on Ronald Reagan. Welcome to Peter Robinson Unbridled. We just finished recording a conversation with Robert George and Cornel West, both professors at Princeton and now the co-authors of the book Truth Matters, a dialogue on fruitful disagreement in an age of decision. Robbie George and Cornel West disagree about everything, and they agree about everything. And if you think that sounds crazy, just you watch.
To Berlin, the American presidents, because it's our duty to speak in this place of freedom. If you seek peace, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I want to test this friendship, this supposed friendship. Cornel West, you ran for president last year as an independent, calling for radical change, insisting you would, I'm quoting you, tell the truth about Wall Street, about the Pentagon, about big tech. What are you doing writing a book with and buddying around with Robbie George, who has devoted his entire life to upholding the American order?
Oh, no, because my dear brother Robbie, who I have such deep love for and respect for, he's concerned about truth in the same way I am. Now, he may reach different conclusions, and he's got some strong criticisms of the American order because he knows every order's got to be dynamic. You can't be conservative if you don't recognize that there are things about the status quo you must change in order to preserve the best of the past.
Okay, I'm looking at Robbie for nodding or shaking his head. I want the truth to be told. So, Robbie, this is you refer to this man. You refer to each other as Brother Robbie and Brother Cornel, not an acquaintance, not a friend, but brother. Explain that.
We have a bond. That bond is not founded on agreement on policy questions or political questions or other great questions. It's founded on a shared commitment to trying to get at the truth of things, knowing that as frail, fallible, fallen human beings, we're never going to get to the truth fully. Whatever truth we achieve will always be admixed with a certain amount of error. But we believe that we can best get at the truth by engaging the best that has been thought and said on competing sides of issues. So we want to test each other. We want to challenge each other with a common goal of getting at the truth of things.
All right, so I want to find out just what you mean by the truth. So let's take the master text, John 18:37-38. Jesus answered, "For this cause I came into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth." Pilate saith unto him, these are the most chilling words in Western civilization. Pilate saith unto him, "What is truth?" Cornel, truth is not just mathematical accuracy.
That's right.
What is truth?
Well, for me,
The two of you are after, you're talking about the ground of being in some way.
absolutely, absolutely. No, for me, you see, as a Christian, when Jesus says, "I am the truth," it is the fleshification of the most fundamental reality that we can gain access to, that allows us to pursue ways of truth. We never possess truth itself, capital T, because as Brown said, we're fallen finite human beings. But there's ways to truth, and ways to truth have to do with a certain kind of character. You have to have integrity. You have to have an honesty. You have to have a courage to interrogate yourself. One of the reasons why I love this brother is not just our truth seeking. He's got character, integrity. He says what he means what he says. Most people in the culture pose, posture, concerned about their careers, their next opportunity, their market strategy, what their brand is. He doesn't have a brand. He has a cause. That's deeper. even when he's wrong. I love it because we have different conclusions sometimes.
We're going to
But it's
I want to
character. That's the key.
We'll get to a few points on which the two of you disagree. I'd like to watch how you disagree. But truth, Robbie, Cornel was just spoke about truth in explicitly Christian terms. Is that correct?
That's right. You're absolutely right.
You as well.
Well, yes, I am a Christian. That's another point that Cornel and I, of course, have in common. But from a philosophical point of view, from what is sometimes called a natural law point of view,
Right.
truth means being in touch with reality, having an accurate understanding of the way things are, whether that is the movement of balls across the plane of a billiard table when struck by the cue or struck by another ball, or whether that means the truth about whether I should tell a lie, say tell a lie to advance my career, or tell a lie to protect the reputation of a friend who has done something embarrassing or even disgraceful. Being in touch with what the correct answer is to the way things actually are.
All right. Cornel, I'm quoting now from Truth Matters. This is you. St. Francis of Assisi is as close a comrade as I can get, and so is Dorothy Day. Dorothy Day, 20th century founder of the Catholic Worker. And so is Dorothy Day, who all her life wrestled with despair and darkness, but allowed love to have the last words. I don't think human beings have what it takes without grace, without a gift from the outside. Explain that.
Well, in a way, it's the kind of meditation on T.S. Eliot's claim about human beings can only bear so much reality, that we human beings are wretched, we're deprived and depraved in a number of different ways, and therefore a call for help sits at the center of who we are. All of us need help, no matter how autonomous and free and independent we think we are. And that call for help can be responded to from a friend or God, or even a certain kind of allegiance to an ideal. It could be as secular, if you're secular, it could be a series of narratives, even novels you hold on to for dear life. Meaning what then? Meaning that in the end, you see, this sense of our inadequacy, the fact that we're cracked vessels, the fact that we're shot through with faults and foibles. But there's something wonderful about us. We have the capacity and the potential
So
to
what
live better.
what comes out again and again, the truth, behaving truthfully is not just behaving rationally, as the two of you discuss the truth and Truth Matters. It's recognizing that there is something larger, that reality is outside us, and then that reality includes what do we want to call it? Grace, the supernatural, the subjective. Being rational is one element of being truthful, but what is this other, what is grace to you? And of course, what's behind this question is, are you two only addressing Christians? Of course you're not.
No, we're addressing everyone.
Right.
Yeah. But we come at these issues from a certain perspective. That is a Christian perspective. Now, we're in dialogue with plenty of other people. Both of us have been in dialogue with our Jewish friends, with our Muslim friends, people from the great Eastern traditions of Buddhism and Hinduism and so forth. But you're always coming from a perspective. There's no such thing as the view from nowhere.
Right.
View is always from somewhere. Now, we as Christians believe that each and every member of the human family is the bearer of profound, inherent, and equal dignity. Now, if we give an account of that belief, how is it the case that human beings are the bearers of inherent and equal dignity? We would go immediately to the Jewish scripture, what Christians call the Old Testament. We go to the very first chapter, the very first book of the Bible, where we're taught that the human being, man, though made from the mere dust of the earth, mortal stuff that will someday die and dissolve, is nevertheless made in the very image and likeness of God, the very image and likeness of the divine creator and ruler of all that is. Now, in what respect, Peter, are human beings God-like?
Right.
Now, it's not that God has 5 fingers on each or 2 hands and hair on his head and a nose. God is spirit. So it can't be that. So what is it? Well, following the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas, the great medieval thinker, I would say that we are godlike in our possession of the powers of reason and freedom, or the attributes of reason and freedom. what do we learn about God from that very first book of the Bible? Again, the very first chapter of the very first book. We learn that God has the powers of agency. God can envisage states of affairs that do not exist, can understand the intelligible value, the point, the worth of bringing those states of affairs into existence. That's God in his creative power. And then can act on the basis of a grasp of those reasons for acting freely and not just on impulse or instinct like a brute animal to bring states of affairs into existence. We human beings are like that. We can do that. We share that literally godlike power, but we are also limited. God is infinite. We are finite. God is perfect. We are, as Cornel constantly points out, very, very, very imperfect. Indeed, we are fallen. That's what Cornel means by we are cracked vessels. We are fallible. We are frail. We can give ourselves over to wayward desires that take us away from the path of reason, away from the path that God has established for us. And so how do we stay on the path? We can't do that simply by our own efforts. That's where grace comes in, Peter.
Got it.
It's God's help. That's what the grace is. God's help to keep us on the path. Now, we have to cooperate. God's not going to destroy our freedom and make us stay on the path. Then we wouldn't be godlike anymore. Then we wouldn't be free. No, we have our freedom, which means that we can go astray, but we can cooperate with God's grace to stay on the path. And when we go off the path, as we sometimes always will, we can have God's forgiveness and we can cooperate with God in getting back on the path.
So apart from anything else, living truthfully, a comprehensive view of reality and our place in it requires humility.
Absolutely.
All right.
Christian.
Hey, so
Because we're frail and fallen and fallible. And
if you're nodding, you accept this view. Okay, now let me move you along to a couple of quotations here. Here's John Henry Newman, now St. John Henry Newman, in his great work, The Idea of a University, quote, "Theology is the cornerstone upon which the entire edifice of knowledge stands and subsists." And Newman made the argument in his book, The Idea of the University, that without theology in the curriculum, theology was what made everything else comprehensible. It was what held the universe of disciplines together. And here's what Cornel said in Truth Matters. "In the academy today, we live in the age of Lucretius, the ancient Greek who was the father of materialism. All the new breakthroughs are utilitarian calculations of people as atoms bouncing against each other." Okay, the two of you have spent your lives in academia. How do you function when the prevailing ethic in the American academy rules out the very notion of grace or the supernatural, rules out anything but purely materialist, utilitarian calculations? How do the two of you function, Cornel?
No, we still have a great time because our colleagues are still at times deeply wedded to a Socratic vocation, and therefore you're open to the kind of relentless questioning and interrogating and unnerving themselves and students. Robbie and I don't mind that. As Christians, we don't mind that. Bring Nietzsche on, bring Bentham on, bring Darwin on. It's a beautiful thing.
Marx.
In dialogue. Marx himself, absolutely. It could be any of the towering secular figures, but Socrates himself is a pagan, not a Christian, but he's hearing divine voices, so he has a religious dimension that let's say Bentham doesn't have. But what we want in the academy is simply truth-seeking that is honest, candid, and recognizes that no one voice has a monopoly on truth, capital T.
Robbie?
Well, as it happens, Peter, Brother Cornel and I teach Cardinal Newman's The Idea of a University.
Oh, you do? Oh, I
do.
didn't know that.
In our
I didn't
seminars
know
together.
that. I didn't know that.
So
So just reading this book moved me in the right direction.
We're reading powerful already.
And we find that students are deeply moved by Newman, which surprised me the first time we taught. I don't know if it surprised you.
No, it did.
Because
It did.
the language of Newman, though it's 19th century, it's not the ancient world. The language is somewhat Baroque
Yes.
and distant from the language of students today. And I thought they'd have trouble relating to it. On the contrary, they were turned on to it, tuned into it. eager to explore Newman's ideas, to discuss Newman's ideas. And I think it's because Newman brings home to them the questions and the dilemmas that they themselves as students are facing. What's the point of this exercise? Is it just to get ahead? Is it just to get a good job? Is it just to make more money? Become a partner at Goldman Sachs? Is this what it's all about? Or is it the pursuit of social justice and social change? Is that what it's all about? And what Newman offers is the Socratic option of saying, no, those things have their place, but the fundamental purpose of a liberal arts education is the inherent value of the truth we seek, and to some extent, by seeking it, will attain. That it is truth understood, not as a means to some other end, but as an end in itself, an inherent enrichment of the human being that makes it worth the effort that we put in, debating, discussing, going back and forth, considering the best that's to be thought and said, considering the reasons, the evidence, the arguments for this proposition or the counter proposition. Students can relate directly to that. And as for our colleagues, our practice is just Socratic. We have questions. All right, you want to embrace materialism? You want to embrace scientism? We have some questions for you. For example, if the only true knowledge is knowledge that's been obtained by the scientific method, what is the status of that proposition itself? Yes. Did you attain that proposition by scientific inquiry, by experimentation? And of course, the answer is no. Well, now we know that there are at least some matters, the truth of which we attain by methods other than those of scientific inquiry.
Wow, I want to be in that seminar. So
We'd love to have you in.
I want to move on to a couple of issues on which I know perfectly well you disagree, because you disagree in this book and you've disagreed in public. I want to get to that. But while we're on this, the liberal arts, do you feel a change in the university, in American academia? Is there a moment of hopefulness that the liberal arts, that the kids want it? Okay, so here's A, do the kids want it? Do you see a new hunger? Absolutely. B, do you see a new openness in the university? And I suppose that requires us to mention the Trump administration bashing certain universities, and universities struggling to figure out how to respond to all of this to the extent that it represents the will of the American public. And then the other thing that I've just felt but don't know is artificial intelligence. My buddy Peter Thiel out in Silicon Valley has said, well, the computer science majors have had a good long run at institutions such as Stanford, the University of Texas, Princeton. They've been able to get really big jobs. But you know what? Artificial intelligence is going to be able to do a lot of that programming. And the balance may shift back to the humanities. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, will the English major become respectable again? Will a genuine liberal arts in which we seek the good, the beautiful, and the true move back to the center of university life? I mean, I love you guys, but don't you feel that most of these years you've been on the side of the academic enterprise? What do you think? What do you think? How does it look to you now?
Brother Robbie is a highly respected professor of politics. He's got some of the largest classes in Princeton. He's a masterful teacher. So in that sense, I don't think he's been on the margin. I think his conservative voice has been on the margin because there's been a liberal and neoliberal orthodoxy that's been shot through the university in the last 40 or 45 years. I certainly can't say I've been on the margins. I mean, if I'm, university professor at Harvard, university professor at Princeton, Bonhoeffer professor at Union, shoot, I've got more than I deserve. You know what I mean? But it's also true that I think we're experiencing the end of an era in higher education.
You feel it?
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Oh,
we're
really?
running into the dead end of the kind of specializations, professionalizations, tied solely to professional managerial upward mobility, where young people are now hungry and thirsty. You see this with the assassination of Brother Charlie Kirk. He wasn't just an activist. I had deep, critiques of some things he said and so forth, but he was calling for, and rightly so, a spiritual and moral revival among young people who are tired of the kind of empty nihilisms, relativism, skepticisms, a whole host of narrow ways of understanding the world. They're hungry for a sense of history, a sense of the whole, a sense of character, and a sense of purpose. That's what revivals are all about. And it's something that Brother Robbie and I have been talking about for 40 years, but to see it take place at a moment in which, all the spiritual decay and moral decadence of the American empire in terms of the unbelievable greed that's escalated, the hatred that's intensified, the indifference toward the vulnerable that's too pervasive.
And
So
the good students see all this and they want
they're
something
hungry
different.
for it. Absolutely, we see it across the.
You'd agree?
Well, let me say what I think has changed and what I think has not changed. I believe there has always been a market among our young people for high quality liberal arts education. That is, liberal arts education that is not instrumentalized to some extrinsic goal, whether it's, getting a partnership at Goldman Sachs someday or whether it's, changing the world. The trouble is that market has always been latent because students didn't know that it was actually on offer in the universities. The problem is not with the students, as Cornel and I have said many times. The problem is much more fundamentally with what the universities are offering, with the administrations, the faculties, trustees, regents, letting the side down when it comes to letting genuine liberal arts education slide, whether it's because we want to shift the focus to professional education, pre-professional education, or whether it's because people want to shift the focus to politics and ideology and make our universities training grounds for social activists. Both of those things are actually toxic to the true mission of the university if they get out of control. If they are put in the primary position, then they relegate the true mission of the university to form the young men and women entrusted to our charge to be determined truth seekers and courageous truth speakers. If they put that in the secondary position, they are ruining the universities. That's really what our mission is, Peter. That's our vocation as scholars. That's the mission of our institutions. The parents of these kids, the families of these students who come to us, they really do entrust us with a sacred project. And that is to form those young men and women, help to form those young men and women to be determined truth seekers and courageous truth speakers. For far too long, the universities have let the side down, let those parents down.
And you see a change coming now?
Well, now
I mean,
I think
Cornel
students,
just spoke of a dead end.
students are becoming aware that there are opportunities in universities, if you look, to study great things with great professors, to study deep ideas. Now, there aren't enough, and that doesn't mean just shifting to the humanities, because the humanities themselves can be and have to a considerable extent become corrupted. One way or another, either ideology or pre-professionalization. But I think students now are becoming more aware that if I take the initiative myself and look for where the opportunities are, I'll be able to find them. Here's the way I put it sometimes. Our universities today won't force you, if you're a student, to get a genuine education. They won't force you. You can get through, you can graduate magna cum laude and not have anything that should pass muster as an education. On the other hand, for most universities, if you want to get an education, you still can get a genuine education. Not just a diploma, not just a credential, not just a ticket onto, the law firm, the medical school, the merchant bank, the investment bank, but a genuine education. But you've got to look for it.
All right. The subtitle here, Truth Matters, a dialogue on fruitful disagreement in an age of division. All right, gentlemen, brothers, I want to see how you do it. I want to see how you do it. In a speech a couple of years ago, and a number of times since, Brother Cornel has accused the state of Israel of genocide. I checked that word. You've used the word genocide against Palestinians. Not of a military overreaction, not of a callous disregard for life in pursuit of a military objective, but of genocide. Robbie George, how do you handle that claim?
Well, Cornel and I disagree on that point. I do not consider the Israeli action in Gaza to be a genocide. I believe that the Israeli military has taken steps to protect, where it can, innocent life. Now, have there been abuses? Absolutely. Are there abuses in every war, including justified wars? Absolutely. So I'm not going to justify that, nor I hope would any supporter of the state of Israel justify that. I think that once October 7th happened, Israel had to consider, what are we going to do about Hamas? We cannot continue to allow this thing to happen. So it seems to me that the effort against Hamas, the military effort against Hamas, was justified. And of course, Hamas fights in such a way as to ensure that civilians are used as human shields.
And Hamas could at any point have released the hostages.
It could have released
and
the
changed
hostages,
everything.
could have ended the war. Now, of course, what I think we all would like to see, we pray for, a solution in which Israel and the Palestinians could live in peace together in political circumstances that both sides could affirm. There are different visions for what that would be, the two-state solution. There are different visions to what that can be, but I think that's ultimately what we...
You see, Brother Peter, I think first, Brother Robbie and I begin on common ground. You see, we believe that a precious Palestinian baby has exactly the same value as a precious Israeli baby. So that all anti-Jewish racism, anti-Jewish Palestinianism, or tribalism is called into question. Now that's very important, because then we can still debate about facts and so forth and so on. Or put it another way, that if there was a Palestinian response to Israelis, given an Israeli incursion that resulted in 25,000 Israeli babies being killed in a matter of months, we'd have exactly the same response. You see, so we don't, which what Robbie's against tribalism. You see, he's against the notion that somehow these Palestinian lives don't count and these Israeli lives do count. And too often in the dominant discourse, people get the impression, well, do you really believe that these Palestinians have the same value as the Israelis? Because there is an anti-Palestinian racism. Now, we know anti-Jewish racism is 2,500 years.
Right.
Some of the most hated, terrorized, and traumatized people in the history of the species have been precious Jewish brothers and sisters. But we also know that human beings are human beings. You could have been terrorized, and when you get power, you terrorize other people. We've seen that through history of different groups. So where Robbie and I agree is on these moral and spiritual grounds, but then we argue, well, we define what we mean by genocide. I'm going to push my brother in terms of saying, well, certainly Israel had a right to respond, but at what point is it so excessive, it's so extravagant that it looks as if, did you have to abolish all 13 universities? Do you abolish so many, also the vast majority of the hospitals, so forth and so on? Then we still have, a serious kind of critical engagement there. But what we're trying to do is to make sure that we cut off the anti-Jewish hatred, anti-Palestinian hatred that too often taints and distorts the discussion.
All right. You spoke just now about the value of the preciousness, the sacredness, I can't remember which word you used, but of babies.
That's right.
Jewish babies, Arab babies. Here's Robbie George in National Review not too long ago. Quote, "The central fact about abortion is that it is the deliberate killing of a developing child in the womb." The central fact. As I understand your position, you're pro-choice. How do you disagree about that one? That's extremely basic.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right about that. And I have a great appreciation of Brother Robbie's moral intensity and passion in terms of protecting the vulnerable. And for him, babies become human earlier than I believe they are.
I see. That's your point.
You see. So that I have nothing at all against Robbie's deep concern, more than concerns, just profound moral witness, protecting the vulnerable. You see, so that's why for me, when we talk about abortion, I don't like just the pro-life versus pro-choice characterization of it. I think it's much deeper than that. And Robbie would be the first one to talk about the Martin Kings and Jesse Jacksons and that Hentoffs and others on the left who have the same position that he has when it comes to protecting the vulnerable, given an understanding of when babies become human.
So how do you disagree on, so if Cornel's position is that babies do not become human at the moment of conception, but at some point later, How do you talk to him about that?
Well, I actually wrote a book about it
Oh, 6.
with my wonderful co-author and Cornell's friend, Christopher Tollefson, philosopher
Chris
at
is
the
a wonderful brother.
University of South Carolina.
Carolina.
And our book is called Embryo, A Defense of Human Life. And what we try to do is get at the very question that Cornell is struggling with. When does the actual life of a new human being begin? And in that book, we make the case, based on the scientific evidence, which I believe is overwhelming, that from the earliest embryonic stage, we have a new individual member of the human species. Not something that will somehow, in virtue of some other event or development, transform itself from being non-human to being human, but something that is already human and by an internally directed process will develop itself from the embryonic into and through the fetal, infant, child, and adolescent stages, and ultimately into adulthood with his or her, I say his or her because sex is actually determined in the human from the very beginning, with his or her unity, determinateness, and identity fully intact, such that we can say that the now, I don't know, what would you say, 39-year-old Peter Robinson
Thank you.
is the same Peter Robinson who, some years ago was a 21-year-old college student, and some years before that, a 14-year-old high school.
He was 25 when he wrote the famous speech at Brandenburg Gate.
Exactly.
25 years old, fresh from Oxford.
And before that was a child, and before that a 2-year-old toddler, and before that a newborn baby, and before that a 7-month fetus, and before that a new embryo. It's the same Peter Robinson with the same biography, the same identity. Things that began happening to Peter Robinson in the embryonic stage are still there, having their consequences in the 39-year-old adult Peter Robinson. So that's how I make the case. But you notice that here again, Cornell and I don't disagree on the applicable moral principle. We're in total harmony, sanctity of human life. The question is, do we have a human life here or not? And that's not a question of moral principle. That's a question of scientific fact.
Got it. All right. One of the chapters in Truth Matters is titled Confronting Truth in History. So let's take a shot at that one. The Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we are coming up on the 250th anniversary of that declaration. Historian David Bryan Davis, the principal author of the Declaration, the slave-owning Thomas Jefferson, quote, "The most remarkable thing about Jefferson's stand on slavery is his immense silence." Okay, here we come up. We are now in the year where we're getting ready for the 250th anniversary celebration of that document, and here we have Thomas Jefferson. This is a problem, Robbie.
Thomas Jefferson says, I know that God is just, and I tremble when I think.
So he knew better.
He was talking
he was
specifically about slavery when he said
Absolutely
what
talking.
Cornell's
I
claim.
tremble when I think of what we have to come to terms with given this institution. But like Aristotle, he just believed that slavery was a necessity. He could not conceive of a social order that was not predicated on the enslavement of folk.
Do you forgive him?
Well, it's not so much a forgiveness. He's a human being, and he's a child of his age. I keep track of the best of him. I keep track of the worst of him. I don't really know him personally, so I don't. Yeah, you got to have a kind of I, thou, Martin Buber like relation to forgive, though. But I just embrace the best, and I keep track of the worst and the effects and consequences of the worst. He's talking about my own descendants and so forth, right?
But ancestors. Your ancestors.
I mean, my ancestors. That's my own ancestors, right? Well, I am a descendant of.
Right.
But I keep track of his humanity more than anything else. That's
And are
the
you going
crucial
to
thing.
are you going to tell your students next spring term at Princeton University, we have an event coming up on July 4th that you should celebrate?
Oh, I'll let them decide whether they celebrate it or not. Absolutely. I'll tell the students what to do. I'm Socratic.
Okay, so
I say celebrate because it was an extraordinary achievement in the history of human affairs to declare that our most fundamental rights are not the gift of kings or presidents or parliaments or Congress or Supreme Court justices. Our most basic human rights come from no merely human authority, and therefore cannot be denied, cannot be taken away, cannot be violated by any merely human authority. That our fundamental rights come from a more than merely human authority. That relativizes the power of any authority, be it monarchical, aristocratic, democratic.
And that's
I
a
think
new moment in human
That's a new
history.
moment. Now, is it the fruit of streams flowing from Athens and Jerusalem and Rome? Absolutely. It didn't come out of nowhere, but it's a very important moment, that moment. And as for Jefferson, Cornel got it exactly right. It wasn't speaking of slavery that he said, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and that his justice will not sleep forever. He knew that the thread was going to fall.
The
Yeah.
reckoning was coming.
And it came with the Civil War, and Lincoln knew that. Look at that second.
But it's
Ronald.
not just enslaved Africans though, but it's indigenous peoples too. You see that the human history is for the most part a wretched history of oppression and subjugation and domination, and we human beings can create moments of interruption. I would be the first to say that the founding of the USA was a moment of interruption, because it had to do with the dignity and sanctity of all persons. And those were words on the paper, not in practice, because you got some of the most barbaric conditions in terms of how you're treating indigenous peoples, near extermination, how you're treating black folk, right? And of course, white men without property, they couldn't vote. So I mean, it's the history of empires. And the United States is an attempt to create a democratic experiment alongside being an empire. It's both at the same time.
Can I read you two more quotations? My mind is on this because I just feel as though at some point, maybe about 6 months from now, the whole country is going to rivet on this coming celebration of the Declaration, and all these questions are going to be right at the top of everyone's mind. So I'm thinking about it already. Indulge me, I suppose. Here's two quotations. Here's Nicole Hannah-Jones of the 1619 Project. Quote, "Our democracy's finding ideals were false when they were written. Anti-black racism runs in the very DNA of this country," close quote. Frederick Douglass, speaking in 1860. The war is just beginning. Quote, "Abolish slavery tomorrow and not a sentence or syllable of the Constitution need be altered. If in its origin slavery had any relation to the government, it was only as the scaffolding to the magnificent structure to be removed as soon as the building was completed." Close quote.
No, I think they're both wrong, though, actually.
You do?
Oh, sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure.
Let me have it.
I mean, well, let's start with Brother Fred, though. I mean, he's the greatest black freedom fighter of the 19th century. So
He is a magnificent, he's underappreciated, isn't he?
I mean, what's underappreciated is his thought.
Yes.
He's a serious thinker.
oratory. I mean, he's the most eloquent ex-slave in the history of the modern world. But no, the idea that somehow the only democratic deficit of the United States was how you treat black people is just not true. You got women, you got workers, you got indigenous peoples. You don't reduce it down to this massive suffering of black people. Massive suffering of black people deserves serious attention, but it doesn't exclude the attention of working peoples and indigenous peoples and poor peoples and women and so on. So Fred, he was just obsessed at that moment on that issue. He said, you wrestle with this issue and the rest of the thing is wonderful. No, I'm a Christian. I know how decrepit we are. I know how creative we are in our wretchedness. So he's right to highlight that as one factor among others. And the reason why I think Hannah's wrong is that simply because an ideal is not put in practice does not make it false.
Okay.
So the democracy as an ideal is not in any way called into question if it's not enacted on the ground. You simply say, you have an ideal that's rich and true, and you try to apply it on the ground, and you fall on your face.
And the ideal set something in motion. It lit a fuse.
Absolutely.
That's fair to say.
Absolutely.
Robbie?
Cornel, you might remember when the two of us, we were speaking together in Rochester, we visited and prayed at the grave of
Frederick Douglass. Yes, we
Oh, is he
did.
buried in Rochester?
Yeah, see, we went to
It was a wonderful moment. But we were there in a rainstorm, and we were out there praying together at the gravestone of Frederick Douglass, paying our tribute to, of course, his great witness to what? The profound, inherent, and equal dignity of each and every member of the human family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's very,
Or even towering figures can be wrong in terms of limiting the focus, like in this quote. Now, it's true, he was also in solidarity with women at the Women's Convention. He's solidarity work,
Well, there
but
is a
that
point,
particular
though,
quote is too narrow.
I want to stress the truth, though, in the quote, too. There's a very
Sure,
important element
sure,
of truth
sure.
in the quotation, if I understood it correctly. And that is that the Constitution itself does not endorse slavery, affirm slavery is a good thing. It was a compromise between people who supported slavery and people who opposed it. And great care was taken that we don't integrate the kind of principle of slavery itself into the Constitution. Otherwise, the opponents of slavery would not have been willing to do the compromise. In a certain sense, it kicked the can down the road. And it didn't work because we got the Civil War anyway.
So the Declaration of Independence, this is the ideal. This is the aspiration. This is the trumpet blast. The Constitution is a deal document. We're trying to hold this thing
several
together.
compromises,
right?
It's a product of
Is that
several.
fair?
Yes,
Okay.
because it's compromise between pro-slave people, anti-slave people, between people from big states, people from small states, but it is nevertheless a magnificent document. It introduces some wonderful concepts, such as the separation of powers.
Yes.
The idea has been floated by various thinkers, but it institutionalizes. It creates a national government of delegated and enumerated and therefore limited and accountable powers, if we'd only live by it, and leaves to the states the general jurisdiction to protect public health, safety, and morals, the kind of plenary authority. The Madisonian system, as it's sometimes called, is a way of dealing with what Cornel would call the wretchedness of human nature. The fact that we human beings can't be trusted with power, and therefore there should be no unchecked, no unaccountable power. Thus the system, what you learned in civics to call checks and balances.
It's often called a pragmatic document, but I think the word realistic in the sense that it is in touch with this deep view of reality about human nature. Is that fair? So could I, while we're on this topic of race and American history, why has it been so hard? I'm thinking now of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court in Dred Scott, Chief Justice Taney says it with a snarl. Black people have no rights. They don't have the rights of white people. But as recently as the Gooder decision, where Sandra Day O'Connor, Justice O'Connor says it in the nicest possible way, we hope that 25 years from now, these practices of taking race into account at admissions will no longer be necessary. It's still saying the same fundamental point, which is we, the Supreme Court of the United States, hold it constitutional to draw distinctions among Americans on the basis of race. And only in Harvard versus Students for Fair Admissions, which came down 2 years ago, not just in living memory, but virtually the day before yesterday, does the court finally say, no, you may not draw distinctions on the basis of race. Why has it taken the Civil War, the 14th Amendment, the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s, and 40-some months ago, the Supreme Court finally says, you mustn't do this. It's over. Why is this one so hard for this country, Cornel?
Well, I mean, part of it is that there's a backdrop to the founding of the United States, because you're going back to the 15th, 16th centuries in terms of the enslavement of Africans. So it's 244 years of the enslavement of Africans, roughly 1619 to 1865. So the United States is founded. White supremacy is so deeply caked into the culture, not just the law, but the culture itself. So it's trying
generations to extrude.
And this slave system is just so integral to the very way in which the economy functions, the way in which the civil society is shaped, the way in which people's humanity is perceived, and so forth. So that we have to just acknowledge just how deep the legacy of white supremacy is. I mean, we're here in Texas, you know what I mean? Good God almighty. Mexico abolished slavery when? 1829, right? United States, 700,000 precious lives lost because you got a group of folk who want to overthrow the government to do what? What does it say in the Constitution of the Confederacy? To keep these black people in slavery in perpetuity. Do you know the level of hate and terror and trauma that goes into that kind of language? My God. And yet, thank God, you got a slice of white vanilla brothers and sisters who say, we're against white supremacy. Then you got black folk. We certainly are against it. We don't like this enslavement and so forth and so on, right? And so each generation tries to make a great breakthrough, and we make a great breakthrough after the war, after the Civil War, 12 years, multiracial democracy, trying to get it off the ground. Boom, here comes white supremacy again. Union Army wins the war, white supremacy wins the peace. You got another 85 years to deal with it. And so now it's been 60 years since the 1960s, right? And it's very important that, we try to keep people's personality and individuality highlighted, independent of whatever race, gender, sexual orientation they have. But it's very difficult, though, Brother Peter.
Is Harvard versus Students for Fair Admissions, is that a kind of capstone decision, or is it simply?
I think so. No,
You do.
I think it's a capstone.
Is it it's the culmination of something?
I think it's the end of race-conscious admissions, and probably with it, race-conscious government contracting, employment, and so forth. It's a sort of a step right here at the end to try to finally
Finish
get
it.
the ideal of true colorblindness into place. But I always go back to Lincoln, and especially to that second inaugural address. Think about it. It's really quite remarkable if you think about it. So the address begins with Lincoln, who's now been reelected. Wasn't certain that he was going to be reelected.
No.
But he was reelected. He's now got victory in sight. It begins by saying, everybody knows what the progress of our arms is like, and I trust that everyone considers it satisfactory. Right? He knows they're going to win the war. The Union's going to be preserved. But instead of beating his chest and say, hey, I'm the greatest politician in the world, I won the war, I saved the Union, hooray, hooray, hooray for me. He doesn't do that at all. Talking about humility. He uses this occasion to reflect on why the war came. What does he say? This is powerful. Well, he says the war came. Everyone knows slavery was somehow the cause of it. The war came as a punishment from God on both the North and the South for the sin of slavery. And then to add to the profound humility we find in Lincoln, he says, both sides pray to the same God. Both sides read the same Bible. That God couldn't give both sides what they wanted, and he has given neither side fully what it wanted. Now we may ask, here's Lincoln's humility, we may ask, how could anyone ask a just God to give to him the fruit of another man's labor coming from the sweat of his brow? He's there taking a shot at slavery. How could the South be asking a just God? But then what's he immediately say? But let us not judge, lest we be judged.
Right.
And then he, of course, finally says those great words, which we should all remember, Peter. We should all remember in this age of polarization, this moment of terrible tension with the political murders, Charlie Kirk and the others, we should remember Lincoln's words. How does he close? With malice toward none, with charity for all. He's talking about people who've just brought a war on the country, costing 700,000 lives, but with malice not toward those people, toward none. Charity for all. Let us bind up the nation's wounds. Take care of the widow and the orphan of the soldiers who have fallen. Move forward to a better situation, a better life. It's a magnificent lesson for all of us.
No, it really is. And in so many ways, it reminds you of the best of the Black freedom movement. You see, we're not talking about revenge and retribution and vengeance. Right. You're talking about justice. You're talking about love. You're talking about mercy. You're talking about keeping in contact with the humanity of those who actually are coming at you. Or you're talking about, basically, to put it in Sunday school language, hating the sin and still staying in contact with the humanity of the sinner.
To bring this conversation in some ways full circle, Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, and Dr. King all believed in grace. Is that right?
That's right.
Right. Yeah. Gentlemen, we're in Texas, and can't be in Texas without having a little fun, and the fun involves cards. Here's the game. You're going to choose 3 cards. Choose a card, hand it to me.
And each is a special card
you
for
choose,
you, brother. Very special.
Okay,
card.
you hand that to me.
Can I show Robbie what it is?
Well, I'll show you. I'll show you both what it
okay,
is. But okay. We were trying to avoid this subject, but each of these cards is a question. Did the first election of Donald Trump surprise you, Robbie?
Absolutely. I was stupefied by it. I woke up in the morning and I said to my wife, can this be Donald Trump is the president of the United States? I mean, who could have foreseen this happening? Now, on the other hand, can I account for why it happened in retrospect? Oh, yeah.
Yes,
I've got some ideas about why it happened.
Yes. Cornel, did it surprise you?
Didn't surprise Cornell.
You saw it coming?
Absolutely.
Truly.
Oh, yes. When you looked at how milquetoast and mediocre the Democratic Party has been, and the candidates themselves, the arrogance and self-righteousness of that party, I knew there was going to be a major backlash. Now, the fact that you end up with somebody who's beneath mediocre with Trump is a whole different issue. But the fact that he was targeted
Choose another
precisely
card. Choose another card.
But I thought these were actually playing cards. You got questions.
No,
on
these
them.
are question cards.
You're very Socratic with the cards.
Exactly.
My God.
Exactly.
Peter, good God
Listen,
Almighty.
I'll license this idea to you guys. If you're...
All right.
Cornel, what do you fear most? What do you fear most?
I fear the role of fear that generates hatred and revenge in the human heart and soul that leads people to want to crush other people, no matter who they are.
Robbie, what do you fear most?
Well, I have to say that I too fear a cycle of revenge. I'm very worried about these political killings, especially the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and I pray that we will take as our model Erica Kirk.
By the way, you've mentioned this several times now. You are both praying men.
Absolutely.
You both
together.
You both read the
right.
You both read the Bible.
We do.
You both do things that for I don't know how many decades now have been considered very uncool.
I
think you're real cool.
No, but Cornel transcends.
Cooler just a little bit.
Okay, choose one more card.
Wait a minute, I have
oh,
one more
no,
thing
oh,
to
you.
say.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
There's something else that I fear, and it comes out of the extreme polarization. And I fear that our coming to treat each other, not as civic friends who happen to disagree about important issues, but as enemies, therefore to be not only defeated but destroyed, will destroy our Republican form of government. Our Republican form of government is a fragile thing, and it relies on some measure of civic friendship, some measure of agreement, even though we disagree on policies, very important ones, very important moral questions, that some level of agreement that we are committed to the principles and structures of our constitutional republic. And I worry about that fraying. I worry about people giving up on them. I've heard people say in the wake of the killing of Charlie Kirk, words don't work anymore. We tried it. Charlie tried it. Words don't work. It's now got to be forced. That's the end of Republican government. Now, Republican government throughout history has failed, and often when it failed, it collapsed into the worst forms of tyranny. Our founders knew that it was an experiment. They tried a new way to make it work, but it's up to each generation. As Ronald Reagan reminded us, it's up to each generation to preserve it and hand it on to the next generation. The loss of Republican government is always just one generation away, potentially.
Robbie just mentioned, Rob, you choose one more card. But first, I want to hear check with you a story I heard years ago. You grew up in Sacramento, the capital of California. You had a brother who was a track star.
Clifton West.
I know the story.
That's right.
And he became state champion in some event, or he
Mile run.
Oh, he was a miler?
Miler.
Oh my goodness.
In those days, for a black man to win the mile as opposed to the 100-meter was a rare thing.
I hadn't thought of that, but
Oh, yeah. Yes,
and one day a big car pulled up in front of your house,
That's right.
and the governor of California, Ronald Reagan, got out, and he wanted to congratulate your brother. Is that a true story?
That's a true story. Definitely.
And what did you make of Ronald Reagan, with whom
Well,
I have
we
to
had a good
assume you disagreed with him on almost every
We
issue?
had a good time. He was a very down-to-earth, kind, and loved conversation. Now, I would, working with the Black Panther Party. I didn't join the party because I'm a Jesus-loving free black man, and they were atheistic. But he and I had fascinating exchanges about the Black Panther Party. I was telling him he didn't fully understand the role of breakfast programs and prison programs and helping the seniors in terms of
He went into all this with you?
Oh, yeah.
How old were you?
Dang, 1968, I was 16 years old. I showed you the picture in my...
So you're able to put up with Robbie George because you practiced on Ronald Reagan.
Can I tell the story of Cornel first telling me the story?
Yes.
Of walking in to see his mother serving tea to Ronald Reagan. Okay. So when he told me that story and how good the conversation was with Reagan and how engaged Reagan was in the dialogue, and he said to me, talking with Reagan, he made me feel as though I was the only person in the world at that moment. He was really engaged with me.
He did have to.
So I said,
you know better than him.
So I said, Brother Cornel, my younger brother Keith had an occasion some years ago to meet Bill Clinton. And it's amazing about these politicians, the way they have the ability to make you feel as though you're the only person in the room when you're talking to them. I said, Brother Cornel, my brother Keith tells me that Clinton is exactly the same way. And Cornel said, oh, no. He said, I've met Clinton many times. He said, Clinton was faking it. Reagan really meant it.
No. Reagan was not a narcissist. I disagree with a whole lot of his public policy. He was not a narcissist. He believed in I-thou dynamics, eye to eye, soul to soul, person to person. And that is, I think, we did from Clinton. Clinton is very clever. He's very sharp. He make you feel this way. But that's I think, not as real as it was with Reagan.
Choose a third card, Cornel.
Another card.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Our last card here. Oh, if you knew right now that you would never have to worry about money again.
Oh, my goodness.
Providential.
How would you be spending your time, Cornel West? I now dub you a billionaire. How do you change your life?
I'd live it exactly the same way. I'd be true to my calling. But I'd have more money to give away.
That's exactly I know this, brother. It's exactly what would happen.
Seek ye first the kingdom, and the rest of these things will be added. I take that very seriously.
Robbie?
Same way. I wouldn't make a difference.
You both love what you do. You love teaching. You love kids.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I feel like I died and went to heaven. I mean, it's the greatest thing in the world. It's the greatest calling. It's so fulfilling. It's fun. It's enjoyable. You're around these bright, enthusiastic, and in many cases, very brave young people. I get a lot of students who come to my courses who are dissenters from the campus orthodoxies. And it's so inspiring to see how bravely they're willing to stand up and say things that are unpopular because they believe they're true.
And in addition, he's married to Sister Cindy.
That's the most important.
Who is just a gift from heaven. I'm married to Anahita, who's a gift from heaven.
Amen.
And both of them would make sure that we accent the best of who we are and not be seduced by the money.
Final topic for the two of you is music. We've been talking about the sort of substrate, the ground of being that human beings have in common. They need grace. They're wounded creatures. The Constitution is such a remarkable document in part because it understands all of this about us. And music is one of those things that's it's not rational exactly. It's deep. All right. So you both love music. I have a quotation here from Cornel. Music is not ornamental and decorative. It is constitutive of who I am. But you've got on your website, you've got an album called Street Knowledge, and I want to play just a few seconds of The Journey and have you tell us what it means to you and why you wrote it.
Let the word go forth here and now that the struggle for freedom is still alive, and the story of that struggle is still being told.
Okay. You got enough going on. You're in the classroom, you're writing constantly. What are you doing in a recording studio?
Well, I just want to congratulate you for getting deep in the archives on this, brother. This is the first time I've ever been interviewed, and they tease out some of the best stuff I've ever done in my life in terms of trying to be a force for good. I appreciate that.
Okay, so you view that as being a force for good. How come?
Well, you remember what Martin Luther said? Martin Luther said the word of God and music are the two greatest gifts that God gave to humankind.
I did not know that quotation.
Oh,
That's
yes.
wonderful.
Now, he's got anti-Jewish hatred. He's got suppression of the presence that I disagree with. But Martin Luther has some deep insights, too. the centrality of music, because music is the fundamental response of human beings as the call for help, given the overwhelming suffering and misery that we have to come to terms with, in the sense of absurdity that's forever bombarding us. And we come up with these sounds that help us straighten our backs up and generate some compassion so that maybe we can be forces of good for a little bit. And that's why this brother's music is so rich.
Over to you now, Rob. Here you are first of all, you're in Texas. And folks in Texas do not often wear ties. But both of you are wearing ties. Both of you are in three-piece suits, for goodness sakes. Robbie George holds degrees from Swarthmore and Harvard and Oxford, but grew up in West Virginia.
Oh, yeah. Born and brought up in the heart of Appalachia. Both my grandfathers were coal miners. I was the first in my family to...
I think you may have overshot. You may have overachieved now. So,
But West Virginia's in my heart. I mean, you can take the boy out of the country. You can't take the country out of the boy.
Could you reach around and pick up that banjo and prove it to us?
Well, okay.
We, Brother Peter.
Let's see here.
This is one of the rare times they actually got a banjo for you.
They got a banjo.
Isn't that something?
Is he any good?
Oh, he can play.
Can he?
Robbie can play, I'm telling you.
Now, unlike my brother Cornel West, I don't have a Grammy. He actually has a Grammy.
You do? For that album?
That was for an album with Arturo O'Farrill and the Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra called 4 Questions on Du Bois. That was just 2-3 years ago.
Oh, really? 4 Questions on Du Bois, and people can find that on your website.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Robbie George, excuse me, brother Robbie George and brother Cornel West, thank you for joining us. I'm Peter Robinson, and this is Unbridled. Would you play us out, please?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Fantastic.